Welcome to the latest edition of Dolphins In Depth, the Miami Herald podcast, brought to you by the Miami Herald. I'm your host, Omar Kelly, and joining me right now is Barry Jackson, who has been a bit salty the last couple of weeks, quite disappointed in the team's performance. For those who don't know, Barry grew up in Miami. He loves his South Florida teams just as I do. So even though we are reporters, it does pain us when the teams that we grew up rooting for struggle. And the Dolphins, they finally got rid of the struggles, Barry, or did they?
How about that? How about that running game, huh? We've only been encouraging that for weeks to ride the running game without your starting quarterback. And you were 100% right on Raheem Mostert. He made the running game look totally different with his gliding, his unique style of running as if he's returning a kickoff, that downhill style. And how about Jalen Wright? I want to see more of Jalen Wright. This is how they need to win moving forward if they can get the same quality run blocking and the same running quality as well that they got yesterday. No?
You know what? Jalen Wright had a very productive game, and I don't want to take anything away from him. However, now, because you know this fan base they're obsessed with the young, sexy thing, Barry. It's always about the young, sexy thing. The old thing that's been good to you, traditional. You come home, it cooks dinner for you, it gives you a clean house. Raheem Mostert, they don't want it anymore. I am a big Raheem Mostert fan. I do believe that he has the style that makes the outside zone work. The outside zone, the threat of it, makes defenses play differently. The threat of the run game makes defenses play differently. Without it, you have nothing from this offense. I know everybody's so obsessed about Tyreek and Jalen and the speed and the big play and Tua and the accuracy. But let me tell you a secret, Barry. None of it works without the run game. This is a play-action-based offense. They have to fool you with the deception. And if nobody's scared of your run game, it ain't going to work. So I'm glad to see.
And by the way, credit yesterday to Teron Armstead. He was terrific. Credit to Rob Jones, who hadn't been great early this season, but he graded out very well, had some good blocks yesterday. Aaron Brewer did some good things in the run game, as he has done for the most part this season. Liam did struggle after playing decently earlier in the year. I thought it was a good game for the offensive line. And to me, this is how they have to win until Tua gets back. And even when Tua gets back, we've seen that over-reliance on him against good defenses, especially in cold climates and difficult conditions, is not the way to win. So I know we both were hoping McDaniel wouldn't be as stubborn. He wasn't yesterday. He adjusted, right? He adjusted.
Yeah,
he
did. But you know what?
He adjusted more than the Patriots did. Imagine if the Patriots had run more than 19 times yesterday. Would have been all today with the success they had against Miami's defense.
Yeah, didn't they average 7.9 yards per carry?
7.9 per carry. Yeah, crazy.
I mean, hey, if you want to go get away from the run game and make Jacoby Brissett throw it 38 times, more power to you. A lot of those throws were late in the game when they need to hurry up. So I understand. But I do have a major criticism that I would like to make and offer that up to the Dolphins In Depth podcast. We know that Tyler Snoop Huntley, he's got legs, he's got dimension, he's got the scare of the threat of the run. There should be plays in these game plans, design quarterback runs, as opposed to, hey, just scramble when things start to break down. Because he got caught a lot of times when he tried to scramble when things start to break down. And I know Dolphin fans think he should have ran. He took too late to run. I was watching it there from the game. I had a pretty good view of it. Yeah, it wasn't as open as you think it is. TV copy gives you a warped perception of what is reality. But where are the design runs? Where are the bootlegs? Where are the rollouts? Where are the just straight QB scramble? I would also like to see, and I know this is out the box, you're struggling with your short yardage. How about you go an overloaded line with the Wildcat, with Tyler Huntley at center? I'm sorry, it could work. Put in Patrick Paul in there as a sixth offensive lineman. Have somebody had Tyreek running a jet sweep, and I'm sorry, there's no defense that's going to be playing that well. But I would like to see the design runs for Huntley to have basically gained 7 yards on 3 scrambles, and really, I'm pretty sure those weren't those weren't scrambles. Those were probably sacks. No, they weren't sacks because he took 3 sacks. So those are legitimate scrambles.
Yeah, not taking advantage of his skill set.
Yeah, I'm still not very pleased with the game planning. I'm not going to criticize specific calls per game because I don't know the situation. I don't know what we're working with. I don't know what they've been working on. I don't know who's part of what packages, but I would just like to see more quarterback design runs. If we're going to sit here and we're going to use his athleticism, that's the reason he's starting, the threat of athleticism. Well, how about we showcase that?
Right. I'm 100% with you on that. And how about this question? How about just eliminating the pre-snap motion until Tua gets back, or eliminating most of it? Because to me, it's more trouble than it's worth. You're having all of these illegal shift penalties. I'm not sure it's fooling teams enough anymore, especially without Tua in the game, for the benefits to outweigh what we've seen in terms of drive-stopping penalties and interrupting your rhythm. I'm with you, by the way. I want to see Huntley roll out more. I don't know why he just simply dropped back so much yesterday without design rollout. So you're 100% right on that. But at what point do you say about the pre-snap movement, it's more trouble than it's worth until Tua comes back?
They use it to help them identify what defenses are in. And so even now they were doing like little shift motions, like, okay, we're going to move. Nope, we're going to snap the ball. And that's really just to see what the defense does to react, but it didn't create that kind of long motion that could lead to the pre-snap stuff. You could tell they're working to try to solve some of the problems that they've created for themselves. Have they gotten to the point where they've created the ultimate solutions? No. And here's my truth. This is my God to honest truth. And I wrote about this in my column. If the receiver poke wore a size 10.5 as opposed to a size 11.5, you'd be looking at an L right now.
1 and 4, baby. It'd be 1 and 4. It was a risky way of doing business yesterday for sure. And you're right. I didn't emerge from the game feeling any better about the Dolphins' long-term chances. I felt better about them being in competition for something this year, maybe a wild card bid that hang around into December. If they're 2-3, win it into your 3-3 with Tua coming back, hopefully. And then perhaps the season will be at least mildly interesting. It's obviously not going to result in any Super Bowl.
That's what you want, mildly interesting, Barry. Mildly interesting is what you want.
It'd be mildly interesting. Had they fallen to 1 and 4, then it wouldn't have been interesting at all. Then we'd be talking about how high are they going to pick in the draft. So yes,
no, that's not fair, Barry. That's not fair. The Brian Flores 2021 season, they rallied back from 1-7, won 8 of 9 games. Obviously, the Tannehill Tennessee game cost them their playoff bid. However, they made the season relevant. I would argue to you that this is a comparable, if not superior, roster. Hell, you got Tyreek Hill instead of Devontae Parker. Kind of, you got Raheem Mostert instead of Myles Gaskin. Just me. I don't even know who was playing left tackle back then. It might have been Liam Eichenberg. So I think no matter where they were in terms of the loss, yes, 4 losses, it probably would have been panic time. It probably would have been get your pitchfork. We're storming the Capitol. But this buys them some time. This buys them some patience. This buys them some relief. This gives Mike McDaniel and his coaching staff an entire week to sit there because players aren't practicing. They've got 5 days to come up with a strategy and a solution to get them through the next 2 games. And it's not just about the quarterback play, which I think is mediocre. You got to jazz up that run game. You got to clean up that defense. You got to patch up that run defense. I mean, if you're not scouring every single team's roster for a nose tackle that can actually help you, I don't know what you're doing if you're Chris Greer. Like, are you on vacation? Safety situation now with Javon Holland. We're going to talk about that. There's so many fixes that need to be made, but truthfully speaking, that is every single NFL team. You don't think the Buffalo Bills has fixes that they got to make? Hell, the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers finalized. Devontae Parker. That's interesting, Barry, because I've always said this from the very early beginning when I started looking at his contract and realized the final 2 years of his contract are fake dummy years. They're voided. who is going to trade for a guy on an expiring contract and give up a big, high second-round pick for him, knowing they got to give him a new deal? It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But obviously, if he ends up with the Jets, then you kind of got a problem on your hands, Miami. But
what point I want to make, Omar, on the Jets? To me, it should give the Dolphins solace that their schedule down the stretch is not nearly as difficult as it once appeared. I think going into the season, everyone sort of assumed Cleveland would be a pretty good team. You were looking at that night game, December 29th in Cleveland. Everyone thought Watson can't possibly be this bad 2 years in a row. He's going to get back to what he was at some point. Well, here's news for you. He's even worse than he was last year before the injury. He's nothing close to what he was. So that game suddenly very winnable. It's probably going to be flexed out of prime time. So that looks easier than it did. The two Jets games, to me, whether they get Adams or not, Omar, to me, the Jets game look much easier than they did a month ago because we have seen an old, brittle Aaron Rodgers, much like Marino, unfortunately, late in his career, where he'll make a couple of amazing throws and everyone will say, oh my God, there's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And then he'll make a couple of awful throws and he'll look slow and labored in the pocket. So to me, those two Jets games are easier. San Francisco obviously is a terrific team, but they're vulnerable. They're 2-3. They've had a bunch of injuries. They come into town in December. So I'm not saying the Dolphins are winning all four of these games, but I am saying that the schedule not as difficult. And that's why, even though I've been Debbie Downer and Danny Downer, I still think they can make this a relevant season, get Tua back, get to 500 against Indianapolis, and then you are in wild card contention probably for the rest of this year. Now, with regard to Tua, for those who did not hear the news today, Mike McDaniel said there have been absolutely no red flags so far in evaluation of Tua from a medical standpoint. He's seeing another neurologist this week, but he made it sound like he's going to advance through concussion protocol and be out soon. He wouldn't commit to him playing that first game. He's eligible October 27th against Arizona, but signs seem to point that way. ESPN's Adam Schefter said he's likely to be able to play that game. There's been talk around the locker room that he could potentially play as soon as he comes off IR. So things are looking good from that standpoint. Dare I say I'm mildly optimistic, even while acknowledging everything you wrote on the Chris Greer column was right on today. They have not constructed the roster the correct way.
Yeah,
I've been very outspoken about that. There.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll be relevant. The one thing I think that this stretch of games has taught all of us, there are two things. One, we've built our team around a fragile quarterback who's probably one hit away from, pretty much having his career ended. And two, the other thing is, I think Dolphin fans should have learned or gained a greater appreciation for Tua Tagovailoa and what he brings to a team in terms of how complex this offense is and how much he's mastered it, how much he's the one that makes it go. Not Tyreek Hill, and this is no shade and disrespect to Tyreek Hill and what he is. He's the number one player. He's the biggest, baddest weapon in the NFL. But how productive has he been the last 4 weeks?
And Waddle too. If you're going to tilt your payroll with two guys at the top of your payroll with Hill and Waddle, you need more production than that. And obviously a lot has to do with quarterback play. A lot has to do with protection. But you need higher production if you're going to pay this much to two wide receivers. If not, you'll be asking yourselves, hey, why didn't we spend this money on Christian Wilkins instead?
Well, Barry, it's because it's the quarterback who is the engine that makes this car go. Tyreek Hill, we'll learn that might be the fancy rims, but it's not getting you to your ultimate destination. No shade on Tyreek Hill. I want it to be known if I'm going to be accused of saying things, they're going to be accurate things. Listen, right now, what you saw was a Dolphins offense that got their top Pro Bowl tailback back. What you saw was a Dolphins offense that got their top Pro Bowl left tackle back. The offensive line stabilized. The outside zone running game was existent. The inside zone, you saw a rookie, Jalen Wright, who showed you that, hey, I can get the job done. I got some upside. I can make this work. But the one thing that did concern me is the run defense, primarily when we look at the Chop Robinson's play. It just was not good. And
I'll tell you who disagrees with you, though. Pro Football Focus said he was Miami's best front seven run defender yesterday. They study every play. Doesn't mean they're right. But they said that the problem yesterday was in order: Jordan Brooks, David Long, Anthony Walker. And by the way, we should tell people Anthony Weaver yesterday split the inside linebacker snaps evenly between Walker and David Long. David Long was fully cleared off the hamstring. Each of them played 30 snaps. Jordan Brooks played all 60. Long, obviously, very good against the run typically. Poor yesterday. Pro Football Focus also said blame Calais Campbell, blame Benito Jones. So it put the running game difficulties on those 5 guys yesterday: Calais Campbell, Benito Jones, David Long, Anthony Walker, Jordan Brooks. I would say this, with Benito Jones, and I've been on this, and again, nothing against Benito, who's a good guy. I've been on this since they signed him in March. He graded out as one of the worst run-stuffing nose tackles in the league last year. He's continued putting up really bad numbers this year. And even the naked eye will show you that on long runs against Miami, when he's in the game, he's no factor on any of those plays. So to me, the question was not spending $100 million or whatever it was for Christian Wilkins. It was not coming up with a solution better than Benito Jones. It makes you wonder, did Chris Greer even watch the Benito Jones tape? What's going on here? And then obviously spending money on Neville Gallimore and Jonathan Harris, who aren't even on the team. Harris is on the practice squad. They needed to do a better job replacing Wilkins and Raekwon Davis than they've done. And that is going to come back and bite them in a game this year. There's no question about it.
Here's my question to you, Barry. If they had ultimately decided to give Raekwon Davis a 2-year, $14 million deal, $70 million a year, would that have solved the problems that they have right now?
I think they'd be a little better, because Raekwon Davis against the run was better than anything we've seen from Benito Jones on tape. So would it solve everything? No. Would it make them an offense that's not bottom 3 in the league? No. But I think every little move would have helped incrementally. Andrew Van Ginkel would have helped. Brandon Jones would have helped. There are a series of little moves that would have helped. The problem is not necessarily letting all of this talent out the door, although I wouldn't have done that. The problem is they've replaced them with players who have not been as productive. Right. And that's why we're sitting here at 2-3. And I know it all goes back to quarterback, and it all goes back to them not scoring enough offensively. And they've had bad luck with injuries, not having Odell the first month and 2, obviously. But a lot of this was preventable. That's what's so frustrating.
Let me ask you this question, because I hear this constantly from the Dolphin fan base on Twitter. And there are certain people who have trumpeted this out there, because Andrew Van Ginkel's wife basically said that the Dolphins organization, or put the word out there, that the Dolphins organization didn't even make an offer to Andrew Van Ginkel. They replaced him. I can't even remember the retired player that replaced him.
Shaq Barrett. And gave him $3.5 million guaranteed, less than Van Ginkel got. So all it would have taken was $3.5 million more to match the Minnesota offer, and the Dolphins opted not to do it. I know you said he wasn't a good scheme fit, but to me, you can't ignore the production. He, as they say in the NBA, Omar, he fills the box score, right? Forced fumbles, INTs for picks, fumble recovery.
Nose for the ball.
He does everything.
Nose for the ball. And I'm a Van Ginkel fan. Let me not put this someplace where, but they ultimately said that Shaq Barrett and Anthony Walker were a better combination than just Andrew Van Ginkel, because Van Ginkel played both inside and he played edge. And obviously I initially thought, hey, Shaq Barrett was a better Pro Bowl player. Maybe he gives you more pass rush. Maybe he gives you more edge setting. Anthony Walker has been a productive NFL starter. I don't know where he is from an injury standpoint. Van Ginkel also wasn't healthy. That was a factor as well. He had a Liz Frank injury. He didn't even participate in any of Minnesota's OTAs. He didn't participate in any of Minnesota's offseason program. I think he limited participation in training camp. And yes, he's balling right now. But it's very easy, and I would say lazy, to sit here and say, oh, that's the reason why this defense sucks, because they didn't sign Andrew Van Ginkel. What did they not do that for? I mean, there was nobody banging the table for Andrew Van Ginkel to be signed. Everybody was
I was in March. In March, I said they should have. I'm going to go back and find the column. I'm going to hand deliver it to you at your home, showing you that I said they should have kept Van Ginkel instead of going after old Shaq Barrett. And by the way, I have an elephant in the room question for you. So with all the criticism that Greer has taken for signing all of these injury-prone players, obviously this quote crosses Steve Ross' desk. He's aware of all the money spent on players who have a history of injuries. So here's my question for you. As good a player as Javon Holland is, Does there need to be a serious discussion among Chris Greer, Steve Ross? You can throw Tom Garfinkel in there. You can throw Mike McDaniel in there about how much to invest in a good young player who has had injury misfortune. Is it the right and prudent thing to do at this point to say, is there a limit of what we should spend on him? And also, if you decide not to keep him, you can't be losing him for nothing either. So to me, you have to be ahead of the curve and make a decision at some point in the next month before the trade deadline if this is a guy you want to invest
trade Javon Holland?
Well, if you're not going to give him the amount of money that he's seeking, if his agents make clear that he's seeking a ton of money and they feel like he's an injury risk, then of course you have to consider it. That's what forward-thinking organizations do. Don't wait till the problem happens. You anticipate the problem. How about that?
How about we let the season play out and then maybe we dangle the tag into the equation? Yes, Javon Holland and his camp, they're going to break the bank based on potential and upside and talent. But you're sitting here and lumping him in with the injury-prone players, which I don't like, Barry, because he got a double knee injury. We saw the actual injury where he landed awkwardly, 2 MCL sprains on both knees. Yeah, it's kind of hard to come back from that. Okay, and then this last Sunday, he breaks his hand. We don't even know how he broke his hand. He maybe whiffing on that tackle, that the touchdown run. But, are we calling him soft and fragile because he broke his hand there?
No. I'm not calling him soft and fragile. I'm not saying he's injury prone. What I'm saying is he's had bad injury luck. I'm not saying trade him. I'm not saying don't resign him. What I'm saying is smart organizations have discussions about players who have a lot of injuries and make the most educated decision they can. Now, maybe that decision is keeping him and seeing if his agent's willing to do a contract that's reasonable as opposed to breaking the bank at safety for a player who's a good player but hasn't been a Pro Bowler yet. These are discussions that have to happen now. I'm not saying that Greer's not having these discussions, but they need to happen now because we see a history of the Dolphins investing in players who have had injuries. Not all of it is their fault, obviously, but if you sign enough players with a history of injuries, what's happened to the Dolphins is going to consistently happen. They're going to get burned by it.
No question about it. I said this from the beginning. I can't put a price point on Javon Holland because the productivity is not there. Now, question for you, and you're an analytics guy, so you probably know this. Has Javon Holland made 10 impactful plays in 4 seasons?
Well, he made a couple, of course. He made the biggest play of the season. You could make the case in the opener.
Yes, he did make the biggest play of the season. Okay, and then there was also
selectively. Jets Black Friday game obviously is the first one that comes to mind with the long Tim Boyle return.
Fumbles from earlier in his third season. He's got a couple of career interceptions in there, but he's not Rashad Jones yet. And I would not give him a top 5 salary contract. I don't know what price point I would put on it, but I'm very cautious about talking about Javon Holland and price because players get real sensitive when you start talking about their money. That's how me and Christian Wilkins got in a little beef. So I tiptoe cautiously in this topic, but impactful plays, I don't think he's at double digits yet, and that's 4 years. So let's calm down on. But then again, it could be like a Brandon Jones situation where they just some team falls in love and absolutely breaks the bank. And Brandon Jones is having a good season with the Denver Broncos. Some team can see something that you don't see, and they can capitalize on it. Now they could also roll snake eyes. It happens. But I agree with you. Now with this club on his hand, which you say that Mike McDaniel is going to wink, let him play with. You know what I'm doing to a safety with a club on his hand, Barry? I am throwing at him because I don't have to worry about an interception.
Right. Yeah, we'll see how much time he misses with the broken hand, but I did ask McDaniel today, would he be open to him playing with a club on the hand? He said he wouldn't be open to a lot of players doing that. He would in Javon's case, and he pointed to Javon's value. So there's no question they still value him. The coaching staff values him tremendously. The question is, as you said, what dollar amount do you put on that? But McDaniel sounded optimistic today about Jordan Poyer coming back from the shin injury after the bye week against Indianapolis on October 20th. So if that's the case, maybe you see a week.
You're talking about
as well.
You're talking about 3 weeks for a bruised shin to heal. It's not broken. I've seen him in the locker room. It's not purple. He's light skinned enough so I can know when there's blood. It's 3 weeks. There's a possibility that he can come back. But Barry, let me tell you something. He wasn't playing very good when he was healthy.
Yes.
So I said he wasn't playing very good when he was healthy. So it's like, is he coming to the rescue? I don't really know. I don't play.
Yeah.
I'm not playing in an aged, average, injured player. It kind of sounds like a bad combination to me, Barry. But I'll keep my.
But it's what they sign up for. It's what they always sign up for every year, going with the old and the injured. Now, by the way, a couple weird things from yesterday.
The way they build their roster, you act like they have a choice. That's how they can put their roster together when you're paying 8 players $20 million a year. Like they built their team where it's like 8 guys get all the money, everybody else, because we're not good enough to draft guys, so we just got to fill our roster with age, injury-prone players.
Yeah. But it's only going to work. Paying this much money to 2 receivers at the high end of your payroll only is going to work if they figure out a way to be like the Kurt Warner, Torrey Holt Rams, where they're that productive in big game playoff games. Yes, but not against good opponents, not December and January. If they can figure out a way to carry over
Why you give me all that fine print, Barry? Why you give me all that fine print? I don't read the fine print. They were this era's, Rams. Don't get all that complicated, tough opponent, playoff caliber team. We don't need all that stuff. Just put up fancy numbers.
Two things I wanted to bring up from yesterday. One, glad they got Jonnu Smith involved. It was about time. Most yards by Dolphins tight end since Gesicki a couple of years ago. Also, I found this interesting and telling, Omar. Duke Riley actually started the game at outside linebacker. It was the only snap he played all game, didn't play again. And almost as weird as that was 1 snap for Quentin Bell. You know what that tells me? That tells me that they trust Chop Robinson. So there might not be any sacks yet, but it says to me that Anthony Weaver and Ryan Crow and the coaches trust Chop Robinson to give him as many snaps as he had and to give Quentin Bell as few as he had, right?
I think it's a byproduct of they practice performances, and Chop did well in practice, and they wanted to reward him. Maybe Quentin didn't do well in practice. I agree with you. They even played the new guy. I can't even remember his name right now.
Tyus Bowser played. Tyus Bowser played in the 30s as they completely bypassed Kamara, who's been here for months, and they play the guy who's been here 2 days.
The guy knows the scheme, though. He knows the scheme. He knows the defense. He's been playing in the scheme in Seattle. It makes sense. Rookies got to earn.
And in Baltimore for Weaver.
Yeah, rookies got to earn their playing time. And if Kamara he's on the show team, which basically is the practice squad guys who go up against the offense. If he was out there tearing up these offensive linemen, then they'd elevate him, Barry. You understand what I'm saying? They would call him up. So, I don't sit there and say, oh, you should be playing this guy more, because the reality is they're looking at it in practice. And if it ain't impressive in practice, it's the same thing with Cam Smith. It wasn't impressive in practice. So nobody was going to sit there and make an argument that Cam Smith should be elevated. I did not, when I watched Chop, and I did watch him closely on a lot of these run plays and a lot of the defense, he was easily blocked. And that's very disruptive. I mean, that's very disappointing. I would love to see him become more disengaging. I would love to see them move him around more. I expected him to be an elephant, play an elephant role, play the jack role, move around, pick where he's going to be blitzing, use him like Brian Flores is using Van Ginkel in Minnesota's defense. Unfortunately, it hasn't panned out. So we'll see, but it's early. It's young. Maybe they haven't put that on his plate, but let's hope that they eventually will. But I will say this about the loss, just to wrap it up. The win, I take that back. Bad Omar. It was not a loss. The win. If they were playing a better team, it would have been a loss.
Oh, no question.
And I have the opinion that the New England Patriots are going to be picking number 1 in the draft. And I also have a belief that they're going to get Cam Ward. and turn things around for their organization with Cam Ward. So with that said, congratulations on your win, but you ain't beat nobody. And I know these were once the mighty Patriots, but they're also the rebuilding Patriots. And I'm not sure they're really trying. So we'll see how you do against Indianapolis Colts. They're a better team. They've got a better quarterback. We think could be Joe Flacco. Who knows? We will see how they perform. But for now, it's bye week. This is a light week. Players are going to be vacationing. Everybody's going to be resting. It's an early bye week, Barry. How you feel about an early bye?
I don't like it. Would rather have it later in the season. But I will say this. For all the gloom and doom, at least there's still something to watch, at least of our interest, for a little bit longer.
Something to watch, and that's all the Dolphins can give us. And hopefully in time, Tua Tagovailoa will be back, and life will be restored to usual with the Miami Dolphins offense. On that note, Dolphins In Depth, we are out. We will be back later this week to give you sort of a bye week recap of what's happened in the first five games of the season, as if you want to recap it.